Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thanks so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So today's video, I wanted to just give some tips on how to be prepared before going into the wedding planning process and some things that you might not know or might not know to prioritize. So here are 5 things every bride should know before wedding planning. A lot of people when they first get engaged or starting to plan their wedding don't know exactly where to start, and so they start with the fun stuff because getting on Pinterest, looking at inspiration, looking at photos, looking at wedding dresses, that's all the fun part, right? So of course that's what you're going to want to do first. But the very first step and the first actionable item you should do in wedding planning is to know your guest list and also know your budget. Those are the 2 things that you're going to want to know before you make any sort of decisions in your wedding planning process, because your guest list, your guest count, is going to likely dictate the venue and the space that you're going to get married in, because you're not going to want to look at wedding venues that have a maximum capacity of 100 people and your guest list is going to be 200 people that you're inviting. So that will dictate the space that you're able to get married in or have your reception in, and of course the budget is going to dictate literally everything in the wedding planning process. So spend some time figuring those 2 things out before you make any decisions about your wedding. Number 2, know your vendor booking process and timeline. I actually did a video on this, so I'll link that above, but understanding when you should be booking each vendor and have kind of an overall outline and a checklist of when to check those items off your list during the wedding planning process is going to make things feel a lot less stressful for you and a lot less up in the air if you know exactly when you should be checking those items off of your list. Especially right now, vendors are booking out very far in advance, so just as an overall rule, it's never too soon to book vendors. If you have a long engagement, if you got engaged and you're planning a wedding 9 to 12 months out, which is kind of like the standard timeline, a lot of those vendors you're going to want to be booking in that 9 to 12 month range, as they do tend to book out pretty far in advance. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at vendors and trying to make decisions about wedding planning. Make a lot of those big ticket items and big vendor decisions early on in the process, and then that will help kind of ease the stress of the planning later on, leading up to the wedding. Number 3, think through your priorities and your wants list. So spend some time, whether this is on your own or with your partner, sit down and create a list that has, maybe one column that is your priorities and one column that is your wants. So you'll have your wants are things like, I for sure want to have a floral arrangement on my arch that looks like this inspiration photo that I saw. Your priorities would be something like, I want to make sure that my guests have a really fun night on the dance floor. I want to make sure that the energy level is high, that we have a really good band or a really good DJ. So understanding what your priorities are for your overall wedding and the wedding experience, for whether that's for you guys as a couple or for your guests, is going to help determine where you should kind of place your emphasis on your wedding planning. So if you know what your priorities are, that's where you're going to spend a little bit more time making those decisions and maybe a little bit more of your budget on those items, and you can know where you can kind of scrimp a little bit or save a little bit of money in other places that aren't as high of a priority for you. Understanding those before the wedding planning process, or before you get too deep into the wedding planning process, is going to make your decision making a lot easier. You're going to have to make a lot of decisions throughout the wedding planning process, and if you know what your priorities are, it'll really help to kind of narrow down those options for you and make decisions a little bit easier. Number 4, people are going to ask you questions probably every single day leading up to your wedding, from the time you get engaged to your wedding day, and that's just something to be expected. And most of the time, these are friends or people that are, they mean well, they're just curious about your wedding. But when you're in the thick of it, when you're planning your wedding, it could be kind of stressful and overwhelming when people are constantly asking you questions. So A, be prepared for this, and B, maybe have a kind of plan of attack for how you're going to handle these questions and without letting it make you too overwhelmed or stressed out. And kind of an obvious solution is to have a wedding planner, and then you can kind of direct all those questions to the wedding planner, or just tell the people that are asking, be like, hey, you know what, my wedding planner is taking care of it. I actually don't know. If you don't have it in the budget to have a wedding planner, or you don't want to have a wedding planner, totally fine. Another great thing to incorporate into your wedding is a wedding website. And this way, when people are asking you like logistical questions about your wedding or anything specific about the location or any of your vendors you can even put on there, having all that information on your wedding website is a great way to just be like, hey, here's the link to our website, and all the information is there, and you don't have to constantly field questions, especially in the last few days or week or two leading up to your wedding. People tend to ask a bunch of questions on like lodging or directions or timing or any of that. And so if you just have that all up on your website, you don't have to answer any of those questions personally. You can just direct them to the website and all the information they need is right there. Number 5, it's really easy to go over budget. Like really easy. So make sure that once you set your wedding budget, stick to it. You can do it. You know, there's ways to save money, there's ways to stay on budget. If you know that something is out of your price range or it's going to make you go over budget, it's not worth it, honestly. It might feel like it during the planning process or on your wedding day, but if you're going over budget or if you're going into debt for your wedding day, once the wedding is over, the wedding is over and the party is over and the fun stuff at your wedding is over, and sure, you're going to have those memories and you're going to remember it, but what's going to stick around is going to be that hole that you created. And if you're starting a new life with your partner, you don't want to start it in debt. No wedding is worth going into debt over, and I'm a wedding planner, like that is my personal opinion. Even though this is my livelihood, I still think that there's no need to go into debt for your wedding planning, and there's really no need to go over budget either. If you know something is out of your price range, find a solution, either cut back on something else so that you can have that item and not go over budget, or just choose another option. So just be very aware of your finances, be very aware of your budget and each category within your budget as you are going through the planning process, and just make sure that you are sticking to the budget that you set for yourself early on, and it's just going to save you a lot of stress and a lot of headache after the wedding. And I know this video said 5 things, but I'm going to throw in a bonus one here. Number 6, things are going to go wrong. That's just a fact of the matter. And pretty much every wedding I do, something will go not necessarily wrong, but maybe not as planned. And 99% of the time, I'm the only one that knows, and that's great. And so the bride never has to know, the groom never has to know, family members never have to know. But if something does go wrong and you are aware of it, it's okay. These things happen, and that's why you want to really think through your timeline and have a plan. And this is where having even just a day of coordinator really comes in handy, because they are there to kind of mediate any problems that arise and think quick on their feet and be able to solve any issues that may come up, so that when things do go wrong, whether they are small or large, they can be handled very quickly and efficiently and in a manner that makes it so that nobody else even knows things are going wrong. Don't completely stress out about it. It's just a part of the wedding planning process, and likely nobody else is even going to notice. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared to dive into the wedding planning journey after this video. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we will see you next week.